Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Welcome to the I Am Salt Lake podcast. This is episode 83. My name is Chris Hollifield. I am the host. Welcome to my show. Especially if this is your first time listening in, I want to personally thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking a few minutes out of your day to listen to my show. IamSaltLake.com is a website. You can head on over there and listen to all the previous episodes right there directly online. You can download them. Also have links for iTunes and Stitcher Radio. This episode, I had the opportunity to sit down with Angela Brown, the editor from Slug Magazine. She also started up Craft Lake City back in 2009. We talk about that in the conversation. We talk about her growing up here in Utah. She's a really, really great individual, somebody that I look up to and think very highly of, and is doing some really, really great things here in the Salt Lake City area. If you aren't familiar with Slug Magazine, I suggest you pretty much go anywhere cool, like they say, and pick up the most recent issue, the most recent copy that comes out once a month. Also download their podcast, Sound Waves from the Underground. That comes out every Monday. They're at slugmag.com. I mean, pretty much everywhere here in the Salt Lake City area. And I don't know what this area would be like without Slug Magazine around. So I was really, really honored to sit down with Angela Brown, find out a little bit more about her, find out how she got involved with Slug Magazine, just find out about her as a person. So I'm going to quit talking now and let's jump into that conversation that I had now with Angela Brown. Introduce yourself, share with the listeners who is Angela Brown. Just a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
Kind of how you started with Slug, and just kind of, just who is Angela Brown?
I'm Angela Brown, editor and publisher of Slug Magazine, Salt Lake Underground Magazine. I'm also the executive director and president of Craft Lake City, which is a 501c3 DIY nonprofit organization. And so those are my main two career-oriented positions that take up a lot of my time that I enjoy immensely. Besides that, what else do I do? I perform in a belly dancing troupe called Blue Lotus Dance Collaborative.
Wow.
And I've been part of that group for a little over a decade, about 10 years, which is great. I've been dancing since I was 18, so quite a while now. And one of my passions that I don't get a chance to put much time into lately is silver gelatin print photography.
Wow.
I love working in the photographic darkroom.
You went to college or to school at Salt Lake Community for photography, right? Yeah,
I did. I got my 2-year degree, my associate's of applied science, and with an emphasis in photography down there. And at the time, and I think it's still the case, the photography department was better than the one up at the University of Utah. And they had a program, which I don't think this part exists anymore, but you could get your 2-year degree from Salt Lake Community College, and then you could test into a master's program at the Brooks College in Santa Barbara, California. And in the 90s, Brooks was one of the most premier photographic schools that you could attend. And so I was really looking towards, at that point in my life, that career path of getting my degree in photography, testing in the master's program. Then I'd have a year of schooling there. Oh my God, at like $60,000 a year.
So you never made it down to
I
Brooks,
didn't.
then?
Yeah, I didn't. But that was my plan for a while, was get my 2-year degree at the community college, test in the master's program, move to California, and then start my career as a photojournalist.
Wow. And where did you want it? Did you have like any ideas of what you wanted to do with photojournalism or?
Yeah. And that's something that actually I knew at a very young age that I loved photography and that was my passion. And it's interesting because it's actually photography has led me to where I am today.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that worked out is and one of the reasons why I loved photography and it was that I could incorporate my other passions. I'm one of these people that I get excited by a lot of different things, and I have a lot of
passion,
a lot of passions. Yes.
A lot of different interests,
creative catalysts, and so with photography, I could take my top two, working in the darkroom, working through that whole process of seeing that magical image appear in science, that science and art that I really connection, which I really love, as well as my love of music, and put those together. And so I started doing in high school, photographing a lot of local bands. And
you grew up here in Salt Lake, right?
Born and bred in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah.
And so I started kind of realizing that hey, I love music and I can photograph musicians. I can document what they're doing for fun and for experience, and really kind of mesh those two first loves.
And were you like photographing a lot of like the Salt Lake bands back in like the 90s, or
in the 90s.
What time era probably were you?
Early 90s. Let's say probably when I really started doing that was like 92, 93, and I was still in high school. And in fact, I had a fake ID that said that I was 27.
And you were still in high school.
I was still in high school, but I didn't use the fake ID to go out and drink. I used it because at that time, there was no Kilby Court.
There was no all ages.
There was the Pompadour had just closed down, and so there really weren't any places except for. The Moroccan was before the Moroccan was even happening, and so there weren't really house parties, but that's about it. And so all of the local music was happening at bars. And so I would get to know these local musicians, give them my fake ID name. They put me on the guest list, and that's how I'd get in. And I just make sure to stay away from the bar.
Yeah, I remember the Moroccan. There were some good shows there back in the day.
There were some really great shows there.
Yeah, it's the Copper Palette Press now.
Mm-hmm. Which it's great to see that area still active.
Yeah. So how did you kind of share your story? How did you get teamed up with Slug then?
Sure.
How long have you been with Slug?
Sure. I've been with Slug, let's see, how many years? About 14 years now. So pretty much my entire adult life.
Wow.
And I knew that I loved music. I loved photography. So while I was going to school, I took a job at a place called Modified Music that was there on the 9th and 9th area. And it was upstairs. It was a really fun alternative music store that specialized in importing in music from the UK. Mm-hmm. And I was in charge of, we kind of all had our different genres of music that we specialized in. I specialized in the goth industrial genre. So that was really my beat. Those are the customers that I catered towards, and worked there for about 2.5 years. And that's how I met some of the local bands that I would photograph. And it was a great way for me to just kind of stay immersed in the music culture, get a good discount on one of my addictions, which is purchasing music, vinyl records.
I bet you created quite a collection of...
Yes, I do have a pretty nice collection over the years. And so from there... then, I was working at Modified for a while. They moved locations. They actually bought a building. The owners bought a building down by Randy's Records, and the traffic dropped immensely. We went from having, really, really successful days to having days where maybe we only made a couple sales.
Really?
And a lot of, people just had a hard time finding where we were. We'd been there for so many years. And so...
Was this at all like during when music started going digitally?
No, this is before that. So this is probably like 96.
Okay.
And then at that time, I realized that, you know what? We also, there's a really cool clothing store called Galaxina that was right next to Modified upstairs, and it had purple walls with green flames going up the side of it. And this is before Hot Topic was in the market. And they sold like the crazy latex clothes. They sold like the weird rubber pants. They sold, fluorescent rave clothes. Actually, Jared Gold, who started the Black Chandelier chain here a few years back, he sold his first line of clothing there called Jugular. That was really neat. That was a really fun time because we had the music and the fashion all connected together kind of there on that block. And then, so Galaxina closed down, Modified moved, and I knew that I kind of wanted to make a little bit of a change. I started working for a record label called Mammoth Records, worked for them. And then I decided that I was going to jump ship, and I had never worked for a corporation before. Uh-huh. So a good friend of mine that played in a local band was a store manager at the Hot Topic Crossroads. And it just barely opened up. And
And everybody was excited. Oh, Hot Topics in Utah, right?
Yeah. And so he offered me a management position, which paid about $2 more an hour. And at the time, that was really gonna help me out quite a bit, since being a record store clerk, you don't make jack shit really.
So you worked at Hot Topic for a little while.
So I worked at Hot Topic. I did my stint in corporate America for about 6 months, and I met actually some really great people that worked with me there, that I'm still friends with today. But it was not for me. It was not for me.
I could imagine. I could imagine.
And so, although I did actually learn some really great skills that I do apply with my team today, but realized it wasn't where I wanted to be. And so, for the first time in my life, without having a plan, I just quit. I put my friend Justin Cameron, he and I were both assistant managers, and we both plotted together that we'd resign at the same time, and we did.
And you did.
And they didn't let us give our 2 weeks notice. They took our keys right away, pushed us out the door, and I was like, "Fuck, what am I gonna do?"
Yeah. You had no backup plan.
I had no backup plan.
Yeah.
So I went into Salt City CDs, which was another really cool record store that was on the 9th and 9th block. That was our competitor at the time, but modified it since moved down. And I knew the employees there, because we would recommend that they go down there if they couldn't get what we were selling. And so I got a job there eventually. And that was where I met, working at Salt City CDs, was where I met Gianni. And Gianni Ellefson was the second publisher of Slug Magazine. And he recruited me to shoot a cover for Slug. So I shot my first cover for Slug Magazine. And at the time I was also freelancing with the City Weekly. Then it was the Private Eye. I was shooting for Utah Style and Design Magazine. I was shooting for Salt Lake Magazine. I'd gotten some photos published in a couple UK publications like the Melody Maker and some other stuff. And then I was also doing, and this is before digital had really caught on.
And was this after you finished up school? Or
yeah,
were you still in school at this time, or no?
This is I took a respite and then like a 6-month break or something. So I think this might have been officially before I had my degree, but pretty close. But pretty close. And so then at that time, I was freelancing. So Gianni kind of knew that I had a reputation for taking photos, but he met me at the record store because he would moonlight at Salt City CDs sometimes and fill in shifts, and was really good friends with the owners who were my bosses, Rick and Jean. And so he asked me if I'd shoot for him. And then about 6 months later, he found out that I could write as well, and that I knew a lot about music. And so he said, "Hey, will you come work for me? I need a new managing editor." And at the time, Gianni Ellison did not have a very good reputation. With
a good reputation in Salt Lake, or just in general.
I guess as far as with financially. And what I mean by that is that he was sort of infamous for hiring people and not paying them, at least that I had heard of.
Yeah.
So even though, I'd shot the cover and he paid me for the cover, I didn't have that response, that experience with him, but I'd heard that from some other people that had recently worked for him. So I was a little bit kind of like, a little sketchy about it. So
But I'm sure that was still cool to be asked to shoot a cover of Slug. I mean,
it was. And it was cool to be asked to be his managing editor too. And I was kind of at the fence about it. I was like, God, should I take this position? Should I not? And at the time, I was also not stoked on the magazine. I thought it was going through a really boring time. It was very.
Well, it was different back then, too.
It was totally different. And there was a lot of it was kind of dominated by the male ego. I thought it was kind of chauvinistic. They weren't covering local music. A lot of the national music that was being covered, I thought was shit.
Yeah. Well, that's how the punk rock community was back then. It was very male run. It was very, I think so, at least.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Well, and I would say maybe Gianni will be bummed for me saying this, but I thought the music was more grunge oriented than punk related.
Yeah,
and some people say that there's related, but at the time, to me, grunge was really mainstream, and really I was anti-grunge. So I took a meeting with a coworker at Salt City CDs, whose girlfriend AJ was one of his managing editors, and AJ was a really rad girl. We're actually coming up on, I think, her 15th anniversary of her death. She passed away on the 4th of July. But she was a really fucking awesome lady, and worked for Gianni for a number of years, and she was no longer with us, but I pulled one of her girlfriends aside, or her partner aside, former partner, and talked to her and said, "Hey, I know AJ worked for Gianni. Like, there's this kind of experience happening. I've been offered this job. Should I take it? And she's like, AJ always had a really good experience with Gianni, but AJ was one of these women that just, laid it out on the table and said, hey, this is what you've got to do. I'll do this, but here's the deal, and demanded respect. And so she's like, that's what you should do. And so I went home and thought about it, and I was like, you know what, this is my opportunity to really put my kind of thumbprint on Salt Lake City. And if I can get a job working with Gianni and help change the magazine to be the magazine that I want to read, this could be really cool.
Yeah.
And so I wrote up a contract that was not legal at all, and wrote it with a little bit of wit and some humor, because some slug humor in there, and basically said that. And I brought it to my meeting with Gianni, and I said, yes, I'll take your job, but I want you to sign this contract that says you're going to pay me on this day every single month, and that this is the way I'm going to be treated, and yada yada yada.
Wow.
And I think he was really impressed by that, and laughed, and took a copy of it to his lawyer and had his lawyer write up something that was more legal.
Yeah.
And we did sign it, and that's how I started working for Gianni.
And so you started working, and then when did you take over?
Yeah.
I mean, the publication. I mean, when did you,
Sure.
how did that happen?
So I worked for him for about 2 years, finished up my degree, also was working at Salt City CDs part-time, and then I was working for a record label as well. At this time, I was working for Universal Music and Video Distribution.
So you were busy.
Yeah, I was busy. I've always maintained kind of a busy schedule.
Yeah.
And I think that's why
Keeps you out of trouble.
It does keep me out of trouble. And so with Universal, one of the big carrots with working for that label is it was my ticket out of Salt Lake. So at that time, this is when I was.
And did you
like
wanted
20.
to get out of Salt Lake?
I wanted to get out of Salt Lake.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, so
everybody had that dream, right?
I think a lot of us have. Yeah. And so around this 1998, 1999. So around that time, I was really preparing to just make my exit and get the fuck out of Salt Lake, right? And so where I was going to go, my plan was to go to San Francisco, even though I really wanted to be in New York City. I was going to go to San Francisco because New York City is the photo capital of the world. But I had an in to get a position, what's called an artist development representative. And I don't even think that position exists anymore. But at the time, what you would do is so I was working for this distribution company, Universal, and they had contracts for all these different labels, Interscope, A&M that no longer exists. Probably a lot of these guys no longer exist, but these big, fat cap corporate labels. Yeah. And so their new signs, they're artists that would just barely get on board. You'd kind of be working in direct relation with the ADR reps, and the ADR reps would help come up with marketing plans, work with independent record stores or national chains all over the country, and help orchestrate these marketing plans and release parties and stuff for them. So I was eligible for promotion, so I got offered a job in San Francisco to be an ADR rep.
With Universal.
And so I made an appointment with the owner of Salt City CDs, Rick Ziegler, told him the good news, said, hey, this is my month's notice. I'm going to be moving to San Francisco. I'm going to accept this position. I was just offered it. And he countered that and said, why don't you work for me full time? I'll give you health benefits. I'll pay you $15 an hour, blah, 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 blah.
But you would be stuck here in Salt Lake and
Yeah.
you wanted to get out.
I wanted to get out. And I had to sit down and really think about it because, back in the 90s, late 90s, $15 an hour to be selling records, working for, to this day, he's been the best boss I've ever worked for.
That wasn't bad money.
And health benefits too.
Yeah.
That was pretty awesome. And my friends were all there too. So that was a tough choice, but I knew I'd already done that. I'd worked for music retail. I worked for Modified Music for, 2.5 years before that. And I had been working at Salt City for another 2.5. It's like, I kind of wanted to see what else I could do. So, told him no. And that was a really hard decision. Left in really great terms, went, to Gianni. He was next on my list to tell him what was going on. And so I told him, and he said, this is fucking bullshit. You should take over the magazine. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you should take over the magazine. You've already been running it. You can just buy me out and it can be yours. You can be your own business owner. And I did not expect that coming. And so I was like, you know what? Give me a couple of days. I need to think about this. This is a really cool opportunity I never even thought was there.
And you were pretty young at
Oh
this
yeah,
time.
I was 23.
23. Yeah, wow. To be offered that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went home and my father, I made an appointment with my dad, and my dad and I, entrepreneur, business owner, really great guy. He and I were super, super close. told him the opportunity that I had and said, hey, I'm in this crossroads in my life. I know I probably don't want to do the Salt City CDs thing, but I could go to San Francisco, get this position with this corporate record label, probably make some really good money. Or I could stay here and take over Slug. And he said, well, I've got something that I need to tell you as well. And I said, well, what is that? And he's like, I've got terminal cancer. So at that point, and he hadn't really told anybody else in my family about that. And it's something that he'd known for a little bit of time,
but just didn't share it with anybody.
Didn't quite really share it. And so at that time I knew exactly what I was going to do, that I was going to stay here, spend some time with him and take over the magazine. So I went out and applied for some funding, qualified for it, and
the rest is history.
Yeah. I never looked back.
Yeah. So, I mean, what would you say is the biggest difference with Slug Magazine today versus like at that time? I mean,
sure.
Over all the years, I mean, you've changed a lot. I mean, when did Slug even start? I mean, when did the first issue even come out? Let's back up a little bit, maybe there.
The first issue came out in December of 1989.
1989.
And we actually celebrate our anniversary in February, but it's really in December.
Okay.
Which that's something that I changed when I came in. But
you took it over in February? Is that kind of
February? Or no, I didn't. I took it over in September. So we're coming up on my 14th anniversary? No, 13th or 14th? 13th anniversary.
That doesn't really
I think it's 13th anniversary.
Guess,
yeah,
really.
Yeah.
But anyway, so 1989, 2013. I mean, there has been a progression of change. I mean, even now, you got a website. And I mean, there wasn't. I mean, I remember back in the day going to the website and there was nothing on it.
Right.
I mean, now, I mean, what would you say some of the biggest differences are?
Well, one thing that I think that's really interesting is you can kind of see the different reigns, so to speak. So there was the J.R. years, who is the founder of Slug Magazine, J.R. Ruppel. So he's the guy who started it, and he ran it for about 5 years. And then you can, so when you're actually like looking through the archives, which you can do on slugmag.com or through our PDF app in the App Store on your iPad, you can actually look through and see the change. So JR was one of the reasons why he started Slug was because no one would cover his bands. And he was a local musician.
Wasn't he in the Jack Mormons?
Yeah, he was in the Jack Mormons, and he was in a rockabilly band that I should be shot right now because I can't remember the name. But
caught on the spotlight.
But anyway. Yeah, and I'm sure he was in several others as well. But at the time, he was in some of those smaller bands like the Rockabilly Band and some other ones that couldn't get coverage. And so that's why he started Slug. And with the help of John Saltis from the City Weekly Private Eye, it was called the Private Eye back then, he actually took him in the back room of the Private Eye and said, hey, this is how you do it. Got him on a computer, showed him early page layout on a computer, hooked him up with some Hoffine printing, which is no longer around, but they printed Slug forever. And then after JR, he sold it to Gianni, and he sold it to Gianni because Gianni was one of his advertisers. He used to own a store called Guitar Gallery, and he was going to actually just stop doing the magazine. In fact, it's funny, when I first took over Slug, I took JR out to Costa's, which is a really awesome old Greek diner that is no longer around. But I took him out there for breakfast and coffee, and I was picking his brain, and I was like, JR, we can't find this issue. I think it's like issue number 7 or something. And I was like, do you have a copy of it? And he's like, no, I think we just didn't put out the magazine that month. Like, we just didn't want to do it.
we were too lazy.
Yeah, which was really funny. But so he was basically just going to stop publishing Slug. And Gianni actually said, hey, don't do that, and saw kind of the value in what the magazine was providing for the community. And so he took it over from JR. And then Gianni ran it for 6 or 7 years. And then in Slug fashion, I was actually at the time only planning on running it for 5 to 7 years. And
then hand the torch to somebody else. But I've actually had so much fun with it, and finally got it to, I guess, where we are today, where it's been the most successful that it ever has been. Yeah. That I haven't wanted to just kind of pass that on yet. Well, and to keep it in print. I mean, the fact a lot of magazines like Slug have gone strictly digital. I mean, why do you think it's stayed such a successful print magazine? I mean, do you attribute that to anything, or just?
Yeah, a number of reasons. I think the first reason is we have a really unique cool community here in Utah and in Salt Lake City that really supports the underground and wants to see that continue. But we also have a really great local business scene here, and it's local business owners that, I mean, they keep us in print. And that's one of the things that I changed when I took over the magazine. Is one of Gianni's initiatives was he wanted to take it national. And this is before the digital age and before business had, we'd really seen the decline in the dailies and some of the stuff that we're seeing now. And he wanted to make Slug Magazine regional and national. And
really?
He put a glossy cover on it and would actually send it to record stores from out of state, and they would sell it for, I think, $250 is what the cover price said on it.
Yeah. So kind of like a Maximum Rock and Roll,
exactly,
kind of in that vein, kind of.
Exactly. And when I came on board, I was sentimental. I remember picking it up when I was 14.
Yeah.
And finding, I grew up LDS, and also up Emigration Canyon. This is before there were all the mansions up there, and they used to call us country kids growing up. And so I was isolated, so I couldn't just walk out my door and hop on a bus and go down to downtown Salt Lake City and see what was happening. I had to walk 2.5 miles. Or
it's not like we have, how we have the internet today. You had to search stuff out back then.
Oh, totally. And I couldn't even just get a mail order catalog and start ordering stuff because my LDS mother would pick up the mail and see, if there's a Rolling Stone, she'd throw it out.
Sounds very similar to my childhood.
Yeah. So when we actually had a rebellious cousin come live with us during his college years, and he brought me my first Slug magazine, and so I just found it in his room. He's like, "Hey, you know what this is? Do you want to copy this?" Oh. And that changed my life. I was like, "Oh my goodness, what is this?" There's this whole other world out there, because I knew what the world that I was living in, I didn't really connect to, and I wasn't really excited by, what everyone else around me was. And so when I was always drawn to music. And so when I found out that there was a local publication that wrote about that, I wanted to be part of it.
Since you're talking about music, what do you think of the local music scene, the Salt Lake City music scene? Oh,
I think it's incredible. And I think it's one of our best kept secrets in the country is the talent that we have here. And, it's a little tragic how we've never had an explosion like, some of the other cities have. But at the same time, maybe that's what keeps the music here so good. We haven't had people come in and exploit our talent here. Yeah. That people are creating music because they really want to, because they love it.
What do you think of, I actually had a friend I was mentioning I was going to sit down and talk with you. He wanted to know what you thought of the local hip hop.
Oh, local hip hop.
The local hip hop music, the scene, kind of how that's, I'm not very familiar with it, but I see it. It's kind of exploding in its own way as well. What are your thoughts on that?
I've got to admit that hip hop isn't a style of music that really hits me in my heart.
Me neither.
Yeah,
me neither.
But I respect it, and I think that we've got a really great scene. I think there's a lot of really great people here that have been pushing and doing a lot of good work in that genre, like Dusk, like Dusk Raps. My goodness, for over a decade, he's been working really, really hard on his projects. And I think there's a lot of countless others that, I'm not even naming, that are doing a really great job with that. And I think that's great.
Well, it was neat how, recently they had Crucial Fest. I don't know if you followed any of that, but kind of how they integrated a hip hop night, to kind of show, hey, what, we can all go to the same, or, we can all, branch out and explore different styles of music.
I love that. And I think that's so important.
It really is, because I think so often you're afraid, I'm part of the metal community or the punk rock community or the indie rock community, and you don't want to be seen at another show.
Sure.
At least from a lot of my, growing up. Not so much my age now, but I remember growing up, it was like, I don't want to be seen at a rap show or something like that.
Oh, and you're actually hearing that in music now too. I mean, the metalheads and the punk rockers, they hated each other. Yeah. And now, just even hearing new bands nationally or local, it's very evident that that's blurring, the line is being blurred musically. Yeah. And I love that. Whereas 15 years ago, if you were a punk rocker, you wouldn't be caught dead at a metalhead show. Yeah. And I think, and it's nice to see that, happening with hip hop as well. Yeah. I think that's great.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite local bands, or would that be kind of putting you on the spot? Or I just curious.
Oh, I'm not afraid. I have a lot of local favorite bands, and they change, they wax, they wane. The new Light Black, I think, is incredible. the new, well, actually I haven't heard, I've only heard like little bits and pieces, but I'm a huge fan of Sabrosa, of their work. I love, I think the new Pink Lightning is pretty good. But I mean, my goodness, there's so many. There's so many.
Do you have a favorite venue that you like to go to? I mean, or is it, again, that's kind of
love Kilby, love Shred Shed.
Yeah.
I love Bert's Tiki Lounge.
Bert's Tiki Lounge is great.
Love Urban. I think the Woodshed is actually a really great place for local music. I mean, they like 90% of their programming is all local. Not always my favorite genres, but I think that's so important that they're doing that. Love the shows in back by Copper Pellet Press, the summertime shows behind Feist. Those are great.
Do you ever make it down to Utah County for any of the rooftop concerts?
Oh, I haven't made it
down there. I was just curious if they were any good.
Really need to do that. We've sponsored them for a couple of years now, but the past few summers, my summers have really been, I kind of lock myself in my office and unfortunately don't get out as much because of all the Craft Lake City planning.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of actually leads me into the next question I was going to ask you is about Craft Lake City.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's awesome. I mean, to put it simply,
thank you.
What is this, sixth year?
This will be our fifth year.
5th year. Mm-hmm. 2-day event this year.
Yeah, 2 days.
What made you decide to do 2 days?
Well, we actually, since the first year, we've been wanting to make it 2-day, but I'm very conservative in the sense that I like to really make sure we're going to do something right before we do it.
Yeah.
And financially, I think that's one of the reasons why the magazine stayed around so long is because I've been really careful financially about the decisions we make. And also with Craft Lake, it's that same way. And
what are the dates off the top of your head?
It's August 9th and 10th. So a Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, because this will definitely be up before then. So
cool.
if you're listening, make sure to check it out. It's going to be at Gallivan again this year?
Yeah, it's going to be at the Gallivan Center again. And then we close off Gallivan Avenue and put a temporary stage up there as well. So there's 2 stages, all local music. We're going to have some hip hop there too this year.
Really? Mm-hmm. Do you care to share any bands that are playing this year?
We're actually still we're confirming as we speak. In fact, one of the text messages I just sent before I got on was kind of working on confirming those.
Okay.
We'll announce it on the website. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the initial vision of Craft Lake City, like what made you decide to bring that to Salt Lake City?
Sure. Well, kind of talking a little bit earlier about wanting to leave Salt Lake, over the process of running Slug and kind of bringing back local music content to the magazine and starting our localized series and some other things that I've done, it's made me really fall in love again with our city and how unique we are, and especially our people. We've got some really great people here, and
it's amazing how that happens, right? Falling in love with the city.
Yeah,
I mean, you hate it 1 minute. I mean, I was at that point, but anyway, sorry.
Yeah, and I think traveling and spending. I mean, I really haven't lived outside of Salt Lake City, but I try and get out and do a lot of traveling and see as much of the world as I possibly can according to my budget and time allow. But upon doing that, I attended an event called the Renegade Craft Festival in Brooklyn, New York in 2008.
They hold them all over, don't they? Kind of like sometimes Chicago, San Francisco. Yeah.
They do. And Leah Bell has been traveling to the Renegade for, I think she went to its first one. And also I traveled to, and so talking with Leah, I mean, she actually has been a real inspiration and help for Craft Lake City and has helped advise on a lot of what we've become because of her participation in festivals like Renegade and all of that. And so there wasn't anything like that happening here locally. And so I felt like the culture was right. The talent was right. The time was right. It was just something that we really needed to do is just celebrate our local artisans and connect that with local music. And then last year we connected that with our science and technology scene here too, with the DIY engineers and the maker community.
And so the first year, it was pretty much a success right off the bat.
Thank you.
I mean, would you agree?
I would agree. We had our first year 72 vendors and 3,500 people attended the very first year.
Wow.
As opposed to last year, we had over 200 artisans and 15,000 people attend.
And how many artisans do you plan on this year?
Well, right now we're pretty much maxed out at 200 with the plaza, and so
That's about as big as you can go.
Big as we can go for right now, but I have plans to go bigger.
Really?
Yeah, we'll see.
For future years.
For future years,
yeah.
For future years, I want to expand, and
you have to grow. If you don't grow, then you kind of get stagnant.
Exactly. And so I would like to see the craft food side really go off in Craft Lake City next year, have more food vendors, more, we do this year. We've got about 20 artisan food makers that rent out a commercial kitchen or something and make small batches of their jams, their jellies, their pickled products, coffee. We've got 3 different coffee roasters this year, French macaroons, things like that. But I'd like to get more of those small, independent food artisans.
Little mom and pop stores that sell,
or even people that aren't in stores yet, and they're just, they're just maybe known amongst their friends for making the best apple rings or something like that. And so now they want to test out their product at Craft Lake City and say, hey, is this commercially viable? Do other people besides my friends like this? Will they pay money for that? Is this something that I could eventually maybe take to Whole Foods and, sell my product at local chain or national chains, stores that are not stores like Whole Foods or local grocery stores, and, start to make this my career, because my passion is really in cooking. My passion is really in making my grandmother's recipes, stuff like that. I'd also like to see Craft Lake City expand into craft beer and have a huge craft beer element.
Now you're talking my style, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So those are some future goals.
Get some local people, that are kind of brewing beer out of their house kind of thing.
And then it becomes more than just, don't get me wrong. I love the selling part and the commerce side of, selling with our artisan crafters. But I want Craft Lake City to not only be about buying items, but about an experience and about exploring
leaving it and saying, wow, okay, that was more than just like a typical street fair or something like that. It was
exactly,
because don't you teach crafts there too? Isn't there craft classes or no?
We do our workshops throughout the year.
Okay. Yeah.
So we do those, and there will be some classes this year in the science and technology building, some science-based classes.
And is it just are the vendors just Utah vendors, or do you have people from all over?
No, we've started receiving applicants from all over, but one of the reasons why I titled the organization and the festival Craft Lake City is because it's all about local. You have to live in Utah at least half the year to participate, and I love that other people from out of state want to be part of it. But no, you got to be from Utah.
So you say half the year. Do you say, okay, provide proof that you've lived here half the year or something like that? I guess.
We usually talk to them about it. Yeah, like you've got, if I understand if it's someone that comes here and lives here for the summer part time or the winter or something like that, we'll still let them in if they want to participate. So
with it being 2 days, anything special you're adding, or is it just going to be the same thing both days, or is there?
We are going to switch up the layout a little bit this year. We also the science and technology area is going to be different this year. Different exhibits, different programming, and like I said, expanding some workshops and classes there. And then of course the bands will be different. The 2 stages, more bands will be performing. We're going to be doing busking again. We have a little busking area for people who maybe don't have a band yet. They can perform. And then the artisans always change. It's a juried process, so you have to be accepted into Craft Lake City by our jurors in order to participate as well.
And it's free, right?
Yeah, it's free.
Free to get in. So, no excuse not to go. So, talk a little bit about the podcast. I recently had Gavin on on one of the previous episodes, and we kind of talked about it. But you in your position, what made you decide to bring a podcast, kind of have a Slug Magazine podcast form?
Sure.
That's the easiest way to explain sound waves from the underground.
Well, I'm sort of a tech head myself. I love technology. I love listening to podcasts.
Do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
I do listen to a lot of podcasts. Well, as much as my time will allow.
Yeah.
I get a lot of error messages from iTunes, like, "Oh, you haven't been listening lately."
What are some podcasts you listen to? That Angela Brown listens to.
Sure. Although I don't like a lot of the music that's played on it, I listen to Bob Boylan's All Songs Considered, just to kind of stay current, see what the NPR music critics are up to.
Yeah.
Although they always do a South by Southwest one that I really love, where they broadcast drunk at like 2 a.m. in a cemetery talking about the shows that they've seen. So I like that. Let's see. I like the Damn podcast by the Adam Sherlock.
Yeah, another local podcast.
Yep, love those guys. what other podcast do I currently subscribe to?
I was just curious, I know how to, I subscribe to so many, if somebody was to ask me, what podcast do you listen to, Chris? I'd be like, well,
your podcast.
Let me pull out my iPhone here and I was just curious, I'm always looking for new ones to listen to. And I was curious if there was any that you recommended or anything,
I love the 60 Minutes podcast.
I'm not familiar with that one.
60 Minutes. Do you remember that television show?
Oh, yeah.
They have a podcast version. I love it. I listen to it religiously.
I'll have to check that out. So anyways, Sound Waves from the Underground. I mean, what made you decide you just felt it was kind of the next best step or?
Yeah. Well, one of the things with Slug that I've been working on is to diversify the magazine and to appeal to the reader in any format that they want to experience the magazine. So since I do listen to podcasts, even though I did a really shitty job of naming some of the podcasts I listen to, that's one area that if I was not to go, I would want to listen to Slug Magazine that way. Local music, it's another great way for us to really support the local music scene by playing tracks from new releases or past releases. It's also, sometimes with our national interviews too, it's hard to convey in the written word the experience of the interview. And so that was another inspiration for Soundwaves, was taking some of this footage with some of these, like national heroes that somebody else may be interested, like Weird Al Yankovic or something like that. Or, someone maybe a little bit more underground, like, John Brandon from Converge, and people that we've interviewed. And although I'm not sure if either one of those guys are on Soundwaves. I don't think so. But but taking that footage and letting our readers hear it and letting them hear the experience that our writer went through, because that's one of the biggest perks in being part of Slug Magazine, I think, is meeting your heroes, interviewing your heroes, getting a chance to have a 10-minute conversation with them and pick their brain.
Well, it's even like me with my podcast, getting the opportunity to sit down with some of the people like yourself.
Oh, thank you.
That I wouldn't have normally had that opportunity to do. It's really cool.
It is fun.
It is fun, and to get to know them a little bit better. And your podcast comes out every Monday, right?
Yeah, it's weekly. So even though the magazine's monthly, the podcast is every Monday.
Every Monday, and it's on iTunes, and I believe I listen to it through Stitcher.
Yeah, Stitcher.
And then on the website.
On the website, through slugmag.com, and also through our iPhone app as well.
Oh, it's through the iPhone. I have to. Yeah. I think I have that on my iPhone. I'm not even sure if I have that.
Yeah.
And speaking of the iPhone app, can't you go on there and there's like a calendar on there to find out what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can read the magazine on there. You can check out the daily calendar, which has extended listings on there. So with certain, if the concert promoter is updated, we leave it up to the promoter to kind of throw in some of the bells and whistles. But there's photos from the shows on there that you can actually buy tickets to performances if the promoter put the link in there. But yeah, just like the print version, you can see who's playing for the night. Yeah,
and so speaking of that, like who's playing, what do you say when somebody says, "Oh, there's nothing to do in Salt Lake"? I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I would hear, or one of even the biggest inspirations for starting this podcast was like, so many people say, "Oh, Salt Lake City's boring," or "There's nothing to do." I mean, what do you say to that?
That used to be the case.
Yeah. You thought it was boring at one time?
Oh my goodness. Growing up. Yeah. Yes, it totally was.
But now there's so much to do.
There is so much to do now. Oh my God.
Tonight, you can't probably alone, there's probably 2 or 3 shows going on. And
our little city's grown up, and there's tons, there's a shit ton of stuff to do in Salt Lake City. You just you may have to look a little bit harder to find it, or just stop and talk to people. But if you're willing to put in, I'd say even 5 minutes of research, you can find oodles and oodles of really interesting things to do.
Yeah. Do you think Salt Lake City, the direction, compared to the 90s and then to what it is now, do you think we're headed in a good direction?
Yes.
Salt Lake City in general. Do you still want to move away?
No.
Do you still want to leave?
I love Salt Lake. I don't want to move at all. In fact, I own a house here now, and I've really kind of rooted down in Salt Lake, and I don't ever plan to leave permanently. However, I do like to travel as much as possible.
Well, there's nothing. I think it's important to get out.
Indeed.
And I lived on the East Coast for about 5 years, and I think that's what coming back to Salt Lake with a fresh set of eyes. And it was like, wow, this is really an awesome city.
It really makes me the traveling makes me appreciate what we've got here, and the people that we have here, and the proximity to mountains and camping and snowboarding, skiing, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I know we kind of briefly talked about like music and stuff, but what are a few of your favorite things about Salt Lake? Like just the simple things. What do you like about Salt Lake?
What do I like about Salt Lake? The people, number one, the local businesses.
They're nice people here.
Yeah, really great people. In fact, I like to tell this story that, I spent a lot of time on the 9th and 9th block and going into the coffee garden as a regular. And one day I had just a really awesome day, and I was talking with one of the baristas about it, and I turned to him and I said, "Why is Salt Lake City so awesome?" And he's like, "Well, I have this theory for you." And I was like, "Okay, all right, tell me why Salt Lake City is so awesome." And he was like, "Well, we've got the world's largest open copper mine here, so we've got all this copper. We've got the Great Salt Lake." He's like, "What are the two main components of a battery?" And he's like, "Copper and salt. Salt Lake City is a battery." And
I love that.
I love that too. Yeah. And maybe it's the battery theory. But
do you have any favorite local restaurants that you love? I mean, I'm always curious whether I've been there, as like a place I need to try, or listeners. I get a lot of out-of-state listeners that have actually emailed me saying, I found this podcast. I'm moving to Salt Lake, or I'm driving through. And it's like, what are some places you would recommend?
I actually went to my favorite restaurant last night. And that restaurant is Takashi.
Okay.
And in fact, my boyfriend and I were talking about it, and we walked by a newer place that had just opened that's a little more upscale. And he was like, "Have you been there yet?" And I was like, "No, I haven't. Have you been there yet either?" And because sometimes we'll go to dinner with friends, or for lunch with a business appointment or something, so we won't know if we've been to a new place yet. And so we're just both confirming that we hadn't. And I said, "But you know what? I have no desire to, because if I'm going to drop over $50 for dinner, I want to do it at Takashi. I just have the best experience there. I love the cuisine. I love the food. I love the owner. I love the staff. It's literally one of my favorite places on earth is inside Takashi at the sushi bar.
And it makes you feel good to give back to the community instead of going to your chain restaurant.
Whenever possible, I will not eat at a chain restaurant. There's no point. It's really about supporting local businesses for me. Yeah. I mean, those are the people that support me. Without all of the local businesses that advertise with Slug Magazine or that support Craft Lake City, I would not be able to do what I do. And I feel very, very lucky for that. And so in turn, whenever possible, whether it's an eatery or, buying a gift for a friend or, whatever, even groceries, I think it's really important to try and support local first. Which
I find is really strong here in Salt Lake, is that buy local, shop local thing, which I love. So any live shows you're excited for? I mean, do you make it out to many concerts or shows? I mean, like Red Butte or Twilight or anything like that?
We sponsor both of those. We sponsor Twilight. Red Butte's one of our clients. So I'm going to go to the David Byrne show. That should be fun. I'm excited for the Flaming Lips Twilight Concert Series show.
When they announced that, I was just blown away. I mean, come on, the Flaming Lips for what, $5? I mean, you cannot beat that. Belle and Sebastian for $5. I mean,
we put the Flaming Lips on the cover of the magazine. It was the first year that I owned it, and it was when they played the Zephyr Club.
Yeah.
Such great guys. Wayne Cohn, he asked our writer if he was available that night to wear a bunny suit, and the writer was so excited, and he was part of the show that night. And we met with him a little bit afterwards. Just really, really genuine, great guys. So it'll be fun to see them play again. But another show I'm really excited about is it will probably be over by the time this podcast goes up, but this Wednesday, there's a band called Deaf Heaven playing Kilby Court with a local band Cult Leader opening up. It's a metal show.
I have it. I'll have to maybe check that out if I get the opportunity to check that out.
Yeah, and if the show's already passed, check them both out online. Yeah. Really good bands.
Do you think print will ever die? I mean, do you think Slug Magazine will eventually just become an online viewable, or do you hate to?
Well, one thing that we do is we try and make sure that we keep up on that site. I mean, there's actually more content on slugmag.com than there is in the print form, obviously, because it's a lot cheaper to do that. We print 30,000 copies of the magazine each month, and that print bill is pretty taxing on our budget. It is bandwidth can be taxing too, but not quite as much as the print. And so there is a lot more content on there, but I really think that some people like to hold something that's tactile. Also, when your internet connection goes down, it fucking sucks.
Yeah, it does. It does. So you want something to read in the bathroom or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or on the plane.
Yeah.
I really think there's always going to be a need for print media.
Yeah.
And I think that our consumers, hopefully our readers, will choose to read us in both formats. But, that's another area that I do want to expand is our coverage on slugmag.com. I would love to get more video casting going and stuff like that. But it comes down to budget.
Where do you see the future of it? I mean, is it kind of the sky is a limit, or do you have any big plans that you care to share? Or is it kind of in the works right now?
There's always something
ticking up in Angela's head, right?
That's right. But I would say, promoting our podcast, getting more listeners there, but also, video. I think the future's in video. Yeah,
that's what I hear.
Mm-hmm. And that's an area that we, get our feet wet a little bit right now. We we produce a video series for our localized or local band series that we put up on slugmag.com. But I would like to see that increased and just do more 3 to 5 minute videos about the stuff that we write about in the print version.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I could sit here and I could talk to you all night. I know you're a busy person. Anything else you want to add before we close out? Slugmag.com's a website. And you can find Soundwaves right there. I mean, all the links are probably on the website.
Yeah, our podcast is Soundwaves of the Underground, the magazine, slugmag.com. The separate organization, Craft Lake City, was birthed from Slug Magazine, but now they're two separate organizations. But I would just like to sincerely thank you so much, Chris, for having me on.
The pleasure is all mine. Yeah. Seriously, I've always looked up to you and everything you've done for Salt Lake. I mean, you're a big asset. I mean, where would Salt Lake be without Slug Magazine? I mean, seriously, it wouldn't be the city it is today.
Well, and I'm sure we'll be saying that about the I Am Salt Lake podcast in a few years. So keep up the great work, and thanks for all that you do too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Angela. Many thanks goes out to Angela Brown for coming on the podcast, sharing her story, and sharing a little bit more information than maybe you knew about Slug Magazine and Craft Lake City and all of the projects that she is involved in. Again, you can find them at slugmag.com. I'm going to put all the links and information at the show notes at iamsaltlake.com/episode 83. I just want to thank everybody for your continual support, as always, for this podcast. Without your feedback, your suggestions, your voicemails, that is all much appreciated, and I thank you so much for everything that you guys have done. Again, you can find us at iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Mediocre Radio Network. I'm on Twitter at IamSaltLake, Facebook.com/IamSaltLake. That way you can follow me and keep up to date in between episodes, in between those Monday and Thursday episodes. Again, the voicemail line, 385-202-5926. I cannot urge you enough to call, leave feedback. Let me know what you think of the episodes. Let me know what you think of the conversations. I'd love to hear your stories. If you have any cool stories about Salt Lake City, maybe play those on a future episode of the podcast. Again, I'm here Monday and Thursday, and I'll be back again on this upcoming Thursday with a brand new episode showcasing somebody else in Salt Lake City that's making a difference. Until then, my name is Chris Hollifield, and thank you so much for listening to the I Am Salt Lake podcast.